Happy Sunday morning, everyone. Hope you're all well. Okay. As usual, talking about the recent videos I've made and streams and your comments under them and surrounding them, uh, mostly on my channel. But also, don't forget, feel free to leave a question on my Instagram as well, because that's probably a really good place to leave a very specific question you want to ask, or something well thought out, because not many people um, leave a comment there. And as such, any one comment that's left on my Instagram, I tend to kind of just notice, because I kind of post there just as happenstance. Anyway, hope you're all doing well. Welcome to my weekend stream, talking about the recent videos here. If you're here during the stream live, if you're one of these people here typing in real time and you would like to ask me a question, please feel free to ask me one, but put 3 yellow emojis right before your question so that I know it's a question directed from you to me. So let me pop out the chat so I can see your questions better. And, clean my glasses. Hope everyone's doing well. Hi to the regulars. Hey, Boffin, how are you, man? Jeez. Adam Super C, Donna, how are you? Good day today in Melbourne, isn't it, Donna? I think it's like low 20s. It's a very kind of cool summer's day, or a warm spring day, if you will. Landis, David P, how are you? Crummy VCR. Got some really, really good comments under the recent video this week. Had a lot of fun making it, getting out for a hike, doing something a bit different. Confession, I actually filmed that like a week prior. So the video before it, I basically did that video while I was producing the video before it, if that makes sense. Hi, Peg. Neanderthal Steve. Anyway, let's get started. Ever since, like, a couple of years ago, especially when I started showing my face, I went from just basically a flat screen and then I started showing my face. A lot of guys in the MGTOW community and the men's community that sort of rightly are worried about, women doxing them and losing their jobs and things like that, and people in their lives finding out who they are and things like that, because really, it's dangerous for them to speak up in public because of those repercussions. I understand that. And then when I started showing my face, everyone was saying, "Oh, you're an idiot. Your life is going to be ruined." And ever since I've started to talk, I think, a bit more fairly in terms of what you want, how you're going to interact, not being hypocritical, not expecting women to be this perfect angel, but you don't see it from their point of view. I'm not talking about the women who are unreasonable, entitled princesses. I'm talking about the degree that you expect from a woman. If it's reasonable, right? And especially if it's in terms of the male-female dynamic that's complementary, that works to the strengths of men and works to the strengths of women. So you have to contribute given your strengths and also a male's proclivities to actually enjoy that. So guys actually love doing things for other people. We really get a buzz from it. But if we don't get anything back and we're not respected, that's when everything falls apart. So I'm not discounting all of that. I'm not saying just be sort of a doormat. But every once in a while, you get these kind of comments. News to the street, human is heading is back or heading back to the plantation, come back when she destroys you, human. And I've gotten these comments more and more recently, or, when I've mentioned in passing due to the conversation I'm having on topics or with people that, yeah, my girlfriend or the woman I'm with. And then, oh my God, he's betrayed us. They really feel like there's a sour taste in their mouth because of what I'm doing in my personal life. And the thing is, whatever I do, whether you're a guy who's married with kids, I've never understood that someone else has a way they want to live their lives. And I can still talk to these people. Heck, I could talk to, a level headed first wave feminist that had a sensible live and let live attitude. I know they're rare, but that's why I said first wave. There's, more chance of finding it there, where they don't just want freedom, but the responsibility that comes with the freedom, and they can talk about it sensibly. And in the same way, I can talk to anyone of any persuasion, as long as they can communicate, they can try and place themselves sympathetically in my shoes. Um, I think it was Aristotle that I mentioned the quote last week, where he said it's the sign of an educated mind to be able to listen to and absorb an idea without actually, ingesting it or taking it in. Like, it doesn't mean you need to do it. It's always struck me the degree to which guys really get defensive when someone else is not a blueprint of them. And so, yeah, just these kind of comments, what can I say? Put it this way, do you really think, I've said this to Karu, right? I'm trying to fine tune my life. If I see a good opportunity, I'll take it with my eyes open. I'm not dating the same chicks I dated when I was young. Even the woman I'm with at the moment, like, I've, I just took myself off dating a couple of years ago, and I wanted nothing to do with it anymore. And we just crossed paths, and I was reasonable enough to know that, hey, like, I'm done with dating. I'm done with the average women out there. I'm going to get on with my life, and I'm not going to pursue this. This is the important thing. I'm not pursuing this anymore. I'm not putting any more energy into this. If something organically crosses your path, for me, you have to be a fool not to acknowledge what it is, and not defensively think it's a carbon copy of Psycho Chicky Poo in your 20s or 30s when you knew less than you know now. Do you understand what I'm saying? There are risks, but the more you have your eyes open and you're taking your time and you're assessing her and yourself and your reactions and how your biology is drawing you, and how you can sort of pause and say, hang on a minute, I know what's going on here. I really like her. Let's just pause for a second. Let me talk to her. Let me get to know her over a long period of time. That kind of sensible approach, because we do like what we like. We have our biology. We have our own individual proclivities. And say when all of those things align, your biology, your particular predilections, and like your little quirks, and everything is presented in front of you, and you're going, well, this seems too good to be true. This is really great. I like this. What are you going to deny? Something that feels good. It's kind of like having McDonald's with 0 calories. It's like, it is what it is. Why am I, you know, what's the catch? And you talk with the person, you investigate the situation to find out if there's a catch. And the less catch there is, I would say you're deranged to throw it away and make it into a boogeyman when it isn't. Because I guarantee, I talk to a lot of, not a lot, but from the older sensible guys I've talked to, they get older and they tell me a lot of stories, just like a lot of women, the ones that are honest. They'll tell me back in their 30s and 40s, you know what, that guy or that girl, she was really good, but I pushed her away because I wasn't ready. I was still bitter. I was kind of myopically, closed in my defensive cage of, I'm done, right? And that's fine. But, you have to also acknowledge, do you want to feel that much regret that you cannot do anything about anymore when you're, past a certain threshold, when you're in your autumn and winter years of your life, when you're older, the time period for certain things is gone. It really has. You can make the best of what you have now, but if you're still anchored to a defensive, safe position that you were before, and it still works now, say, but it's it works comfortably, and you know what I'm trying to say. So look, on Instagram, when I posted a shout out for today's stream, I asked the question, the way some people talk suggests that they may need to revisit their standards. And this is why I'm chewing on my my assumptions that I've always had. And they're generally true, but right now, how can I loosen my grip? Because I've developed um, ways of talking, ways of being more secure in myself, that I am prepared to say and do what I think, whereas before I wasn't. And as such, it's sensible to have the defensive stance I had 10, 20, 30 years ago. I want you to really pay attention to that, guys. And so revisiting your assumptions is absolutely essential to make sure that they work where you are now in your life, your level of maturity, your level of stoicism, your strength, your level of clear thinking, you know, I'll use an analogy. You develop a set of airtight rules about yourself and ethics in your life back when you were skateboarding. And now you're not skateboarding anymore, but you still adhere to the same rules and the mind you had when you were skateboarding and pepped up on hormones and adrenaline you were at that age. It doesn't serve you well now because you may not be controlled by your emotions enough as much now, but you are still, as a 30, 40, 50-year-old man, operating by the very sensible defensive boundaries you had to protect yourself because you were so hormonally charged and you couldn't say no to hot, right? Now, your testosterone, your hormones have gone down perhaps, or you're more mentally in control, or you've had the experience, you've been there and done that, but you're still adhering to a very defensive posture that does not correlate with the internal strength you may have now due to experience and self-reflection. Do you understand what I mean? So you are using old programming for an updated person, you know? And this is why I keep revisiting, and not doing cookie cutter stuff. And especially if I realize the cookie cutter stuff, I feel like I'm a lemming in the way I speak, and I'm just spitting out lines reflexively. And I notice in the conversation, I'm not even listening to the guys I'm talking to. Has that ever happened to you? Like you're online and like everyone's just spitting out memes about women and men and society and relationships, and you're doing the same, and you realize like no one's actually presently engaged in listening to every word and listening to the 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 totality of the meaning of every person's sentence, and if they're actually really talking in real time and expressing what they think. But everyone's just like, it's like a video game where you've got sort of like certain tools and weapons in your thing and you're just throwing them out because you've got them in your war chest, but you're kind of not there engaging. Like you're not doing this kind of beautiful loop of conversation and thinking. And I just think it's really healthy to one feel alive because you're talking in real time. You're re-chewing on old assumptions, making sure that they hold water, and also this is how you can be sure that what you think is what you believe to be true now. If you've got the ability to very objectively keep chewing on your axioms and your rules now with people without being defensive, but to hear them out and reflect upon them, can help you adjust, modify, and even sharpen what you believe about men and women and relationships going forward. So you may strengthen what you think about men and women by talking to someone open-mindedly, and you can go forward not altering in direction what you thought, but sharpening the focus, you know? So it can stay the same, but be that much more potent and clear if you're able to, lower the guard and have that kind of free conversation. So, any questions? Actually, I have to set up my comments. I have to pick the right one. I didn't set this up. There we go. Donna. She said, had to share the recent video on Facebook as a few blokes I know are repeating old patterns. One even getting talked into buying a house with a Sheila and her boomer divorced mother will live there. Ugh. At the end of the day, Donna, people are just going to do what they want to do. As I mentioned, as I touched on in my recent video, the preamble to the main point of the video is our brains really want to do what we want to do, what we feel comfortable with, who we've solidified ourselves as, and we'll look for any very clever excuse to do what we want to do. But all I want to do is have these conversations where we can be sharp and keep talking about them in real time and revisiting them, not thinking I worked it out when I was 20, I can lock it away in my pigeonhole and it's always there, frozen in time for good as a tool I can use. No, it's this stuff to me, especially social interactions with people. What you forget. Now, the amount of moments, think about it, that you hear or see something that really like is a light bulb moment. It's like finding religion. It's like, wow, this really worked things out in some self-help kind of way. Like this really made life clear, this point about this subject. And then a day goes by, it's like, I can't, yeah, I kind of remember the phrase, but I don't feel it as alive. What? This stuff just fades away if you don't keep up exercising it. It's like muscles at the gym, physically and mentally. Whatever's important to us, we need to keep exercising. So mentally and socially, what's important to us, we need to keep talking about and expressing. And when the topic comes up between men and women in relationships, we need to tell people who we are and what we believe in a civil manner, not in a rude manner. But it helps you know where you stand, and it helps your self-esteem, and it helps you feel alive and not, oh, I have to censor myself. I can't say this. That's just the way women are, so I'll shut up. And if I want to be with them, I turn myself off and I'm a puppet that dances in her show until even I can't stand it anymore or she gets sick of puppeteering me. And then she'll allow me to be free. And then I can reinvigorate myself and go through that same roller coaster of like alive, dying, 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 dead, alive, reincarnation. I know the roller coaster feels fine, but I'm one for consistency. Consistency seems boring to a lot of people, and I think that's why they're hyped up on the kind of dating, relationships, and speak that they're into, because it's very exciting. It gets clicks. It's controversial. It's provocative, but yeah, I prefer consistency more than anything else. Landis says, the last video made me wonder on thinking versus feeling. What about when you reject a normal looking girl? You somehow think that she could be a good fit, yet you're not feeling attracted to her. Again, responsibility. You need to ask yourself, like, was she that unattractive? Is physical base attractiveness the thing that's your only real standard? And everything else is like, well, yeah, nice to have, I don't mind. Because the thing, how many times do you keep recycling the thing that you base a relationship off that always doesn't work out, that it's superficial, that it's fleeting? How long do you keep putting fleeting, base level, stochastic, irrelevant, unreliable things at the front of your selection process in mating before you realize, like, yeah, it's just all fun. It's just like it's not a good diet. It's McDonald's. You know what the right thing is. I'm not saying that you discount attractiveness, but come on, isn't there a range? I'm not saying go beyond the range of what you think is completely unattractive, that doesn't excite you, that you don't even think is cute or pretty. She doesn't have to be hot where you can't control your hormones, but isn't there a range? And the more you're into this stuff and you really, if you care about it, you need to care about some of the other things that that I like discussing, for instance, like virtue and values and, you know, unhormonally charged things like, kindness. I know they're boring, but if you want stability, you have to be realistic about what you're choosing and what you're valuing. You can't just keep intellectually justifying emotion and your dog brain, as I put it, because you will get the results of putting, you know, having that lead in your selection criteria. And again, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's the thing that works, I think. Um, so you have to live with it. I made a video a while ago that I think sums up a lot, whether it's you selecting or whether it's you rejecting. Can you live with your decision? Can you live with the train wreck hot mess you're hormonally attracted to? And can you live with rejecting someone that you really know, your grandfather speaking to you and saying, she was actually pretty good. She wasn't like a 10, she was a 6 or a 7. But I know myself, I've been out with girls that I thought, oh yeah, they're okay. They're nice. They're the girl next door. They're pretty. They're not like super attractive or hot. And I can hold out. But then they get on with their lives. They move on. They find someone else. Or, once you say no to someone, that's very unlikely you're going to go back and you're going to give each other a chance, whether it's you or them. So you have to live with that too. So you have to live with what you accept and you have to live with what you reject. And that goes for men and women too. Um, and this comment I posed, the way some people talk suggests that they may need to revisit their standards because I think a lot of people have standards that the 20-year-old had for them that worked and it was perfect. And now you're a 30, 40, 50-year-old man, a completely different person operating with a juvenile software. And Mickwell says, he commented under my Instagram, I change them in such a way that I never ever will have a leech. I like the posture, the never ever, because that suggests you're really focusing on that. I'm not saying we're perfect, I slip as well, but if you have this attitude where you are very determined that the next person you date or you come across, you are aware of the language. You don't have bad feelings in the back of your head and red flags and say, oh, it's nothing, because I just want to be close to that they are a warm fire and I don't want to be cold. I don't care how the fire spits at me. I don't care what they say. I don't care how they use, abuse, and take advantage of me. I just love being near the warm glow of this person. Yet everything is annoying, irritating, or giving you pain and suffering. Campfires are warm, but some are just not for you. Go to another campfire. And this stream is largely based on the last video where I took my GoPro out and I was just chatting about this topic, boiling things down to, I always find like we can talk about a lot of stuff and we can micromanage and talk about, my 20 micromanage points that I really thought about deeply and I can't think any deeper and I can't come up with any more than 20 points about selecting women on a date who are single mothers who like a very, very particular thing, and you've exhausted the possibility of talking about 20 things. That is so specific that you will not be able to retain all of that generally, if anything other than those myriad of specific things you talked about in the manosphere, whether it's single mothers and the government and all these things. And within those very central topics, There's the tree roots of all these multitudes of things we need to pay attention to. But then you go on a date with someone that is nothing like the central topic. She's not a single mother. She's not hypergamous. She's not a 9 or a 10. She's a 6. And she talks softly. She's an introvert. She's this constellation of peculiar things that you need to take into account as a whole. Now, how are you going to do that when you've calibrated yourself online based on the extreme train wrecks of this archetype and that archetype and that archetype and that archetype, right? How do you make sense of that? Sort of, so what you do is this girl, you judge her by just collecting all these extreme train wreck archetypes and like pushing it into her and seeing what sticks. You're not really judging her. And I'm not excusing women who act badly, but at the same token, we can objectively not like it when women don't judge us as who we are, as who we turn up as. Oh, they just want money. They're gold diggers. They don't like men. They got all their girl power rhetoric, guys and myself. Like I was tired of not being seen as who I am. I'm not my wallet. I'm not your expectations of a white picket fence and children. I'm like me. Do you see me? It's like you feel like, splashing cold water on their face on the date and, like, wake up. I'm here. Stop talking to me in memes and lines and your mind's not paying attention to this. Like, look at what's in front of you. This date isn't going to last past an hour. This is a moment in time. If this doesn't work out, if you're not present and, filtering me as I'm trying to filter you, this moment's going to go and we're never going to see each other again. Or we'll start a relationship based on the false presumption of what we kind of turned up as here. Anyway, remember, if you're here in the stream, you want to ask me a question, super chat me during the stream. I'll definitely see the super chat, or put 3 yellow brightly colored emojis before your question so I know it's directed to me. Zone Television says, you were right. That women I dated who didn't divorce ended up being a nightmare. I ended up having to record our conversations on my phone because of her total denials when confronted. Yeah, look, people who go through really bad relationships where they were quiet, they were kind of like a 5-year-old that was abused by a dominant narcissistic parent. But fast forward to later, you're an adult that is still in the same dynamic where you feel like you're cowering, this person's dominating you, you're walking on eggshells. There's a lot of pain there, and you come out and you're free and you don't want to go anywhere near it because all you relate relationships as from your parents, if you were dominated by your parents and treated bad and abused, to when you were older and you replicated those relationship dynamics that you had with your parents, how you were conditioned. That's what you saw love as. And so you replicated them later as a young adult. And so after you come out of that, it's like, that's what relationships are. And I don't feel good in them, so I'm not going to have relationships. And that makes perfect sense. I've done that too for periods. But the more you investigate this, I think it's what we reflex into as our definitions of relationships, how we reflex in terms of our answers to questions, how we respond defensively or proudly about what we think we know. A lot of those stuffs, the way we speak, what we think, and the religious nature that we actually hold to these things that we're afraid of, or that we get on a platform and no, this is true. This is men or women, or this is what I want. I'm tired of this. If you're really forceful, think about how that looks to the person on a day. You might have someone who's completely open, relaxed. They haven't gone through the trauma you have, but they can see the way you're speaking and the ferocity of like, no, this and that, and I'm passionate and no one will take advantage and blah, blah, blah. Or you're talking very heightened in terms of Oprah spirituality and like, yeah, the pain and trauma and blah, blah, blah. And so when you're on a date, it's like, whoa, okay, I'm just relaxed. I'm good. I've been good for a long time. This person needs help. This person is not angry, but I think they need a therapist. Or this person is angry and they need a therapist. Or this person is on a world of their own and they're not listening to me. So how you think, where you're coming from, and being astute enough to sympathize with the person you're in front of, like taking them as another person. It's not just all about you imposing the relationship you want. You should know what kind of relationship you want and take the other person that's in front of you as who they are. A lot of times we impose what we want onto the person and we argue and we push and pull and we drag them to our side rather than accepting them for who they are. And the way you'll get a clear representation of who they are is to talk openly, not censor yourself, know how to speak, and really tell them who you are, what you think. You know, if they're very religious and you're not, or you're on the opposite ends, like be very open about it and trust the feelings. Like I won't be able to be with this person. They're very left leaning and I'm very right leaning. I'm here. I'm an extrovert. She's an introvert. But you think, oh, I can make it work. You know, that's balance. I'll be an introvert. She'll be an extrovert. You know, work life balance, relationship balance, like yin and yang. It's like, yeah, it's got to be complementary, not antagonistic, not sort of two magnets pushing each other away. He continues, we dated for about a full year and she was just using me for validation. She never wanted to be held accountable for anything she would say. Well, the best way, I know women's default is not to be held accountable. They don't like responsibility and things like that. But the best you can do for yourself, and all the guys that roll their eyes and like, oh, human, as though you can get women to be accountable. I don't care. I insist she's accountable or she's not going to be in my life. Simple as that. And so everyone that thinks like, oh, all women, 100% of women, fine. If you allow them to be unaccountable, they will be more and more and more. But from the start, if you say who you are and you demand through your conversation, if you see she's being avoidant, through conversation, say, what do you mean by that? Do you mean this, this, or this? You know, ask for an answer. And if she's like, I don't like to talk about that. I feel like you're pressuring me, or like, I'm not pressuring you. I just want to know what you think because I want to know, if you and I think the same. Like, you don't have to attack her or be defensive. This is why I would encourage guys to know how to just in a relaxed way talk to other people and express yourself 100% honestly, especially about the uncomfortable things, because you'll be surprised when you start talking about the uncomfortable things that you think are dangerous that really aren't, because you don't want Chicky Poo to go away because you think she's hot. You'll be surprised when they're not scared away. You'll be like, this feels amazing. Like I thought I was always worried about speaking up about this stuff, but she's cool about it, or she's on the same page as me. Doesn't happen very often, but that's the point of compatibility. We just try to shoehorn people into relationships, and that's our problem. And we keep our mouths shut, and we're trained by mummy and society and the censorship and all of that kind of garbage about formalizing ourselves as a good little 5-year-old doormat. And then when we're in private, we try and puff our chests out like Superman in the comment section, trying to be men cartoonishly. And then when we're in real life, we take off the superhero cape. I mean, I would be happy if a lot of guys, even if it wasn't really who they are, they kind of in a Andrew Tate way, put on their cape in front of women and just tested their what they thought was real in real life, just to get themselves calibrated to what works, rather than living two separate lives, like one online as a cartoonish alpha male, and then in real life you kind of just you're neutral. You just don't engage. Which again, you're free to do what you want, but Mello says depends. Do you need a relationship or do you want a relationship? It's also I'm kind of feeling like there's a third there. Want and need. I don't think anyone needs a relationship. Wants, yeah, probably. Or how much do you want it? Is it a low level, nice to have, but I'm not chasing it? Or like I've used the analogy, I locked the door on I closed the door on relationships, but I didn't lock it. And I was just very adamant that only this kind of person can walk through, only this key can unlock it. And I'm just going to watch the rest of the hot mess, like cars on the freeway just zooming past me. Hey, human, do you ever feel like you are hungry for new knowledge but don't know where to find it? I kind of feel like that when it comes to human nature. There is much censorship in this. Yeah, this is why I created my channel. This is why I talk to the guys every now and then, and every once in a while, a good person drops out and becomes a person I can talk to and I consider a friend. There are a handful of guys I talk to on Discord and online, not very many, but you just need to honestly start talking the way you want to talk, find avenues or create platforms and just not censor yourself. And the more civil and better you can speak, where you know you're not being rude, you're just more accurately proudly being who you are, and it's other people's fault who get triggered. Um, and it's not that's not your fault. You have every right to express yourself politely and civilly, as they do. If they interpret or infer, you know, being offended, it's not. You know, I can't sanitize my what I believe to a degree where I'm not even saying what I believe and hopscotch around Nickelodeon terminology where I can't even talk directly to you about this stuff. Then well, I really don't care about how people's feelings are hurt if I am not hurting them, if I'm objectively talking politely, maturely, and civilly, but they are a 5-year-old that just don't want to hear certain words if they're not preceded by or followed by words that make them feel good and their fantasy world feel good. I should be able to have a different point of view as somebody else. I can listen to someone spouting trash or garbage that I just don't believe in, and I'll say, well, you believe what you want to believe in, but I don't get angry at them. Live your world the way you want to live, prosper or suffer. I don't care. But if we can't have a conversation, what's the point? I can't become your friend falsely by talking in a way just to appease a 5-year-old on their birthday. Jay says, unpopular opinion. More and more, I see men using AWOLT as an excuse to accept their own lack and shortcomings, even if their observations are 99% true. Look, if you accept the biology the way most women are out there, and I can accept they are, but all women are like that if you're like all men. So all women switch off, they become selfish 5-year-olds. And if all men switch off and become selfish 5-year-olds, then that statement is true. I agree. But if you intentionally self reflect to the point where, no, I don't want to keep suffering through the same Groundhog Day ways of speaking, censoring myself, being afraid, if I choose to be more proud of the way I conduct myself, then those stats apply to me less. They're still there, especially to strangers. I've said this before. All women are like that until you, as a discerning individual, decide with your eyes open to read her profile, talk to her, listen to what she's saying, clarify red flags before you go on a date, during a date, clarify. Make sure that she wipes any amber or red flags from the back of your head. Determine that she's not like all the rest. But if you just go there as a zero and she goes there as a zero, spouting the BS politics from both your sides, then yeah, those stats apply to you more. Look, 9 out of 10 businesses fail. But when you talk to a guy who runs 10 businesses successfully and you look and you talk to him, the way he speaks, how he's calibrated, what he believes, his routines, his will, his discipline, like his level of esteem and self-assuredness, like how he conducts himself. Can anyone say, oh yeah, that was luck? Are 10 well-running businesses, oops, that just happened? No, it doesn't. You see a happily married couple that communicate, they look like friends, they talk about everything. They're both open and honest. You see that they're not censoring themselves. When you talk to the guy alone, he's the same kind of guy. You can't say, oops, you just stumbled into a relationship. There is the oops of coming across each other, but everything after that is intentional to me. Relationships to me are a skill. The older I get, it's a skill. The initial point, there's a lot of luck, but after that, the way you say yes and no, what you accept and what you reject is a skill. Um, and the guys that are like all women, all men, biology, everything is a perfect curated world of 1 + 1 = 2, as though we're not stochastic human beings. I can accept that men in general are hormonally driven and they want to get women into bed, me included. But what level and how much does your prefrontal cortex interrupt you? When you go on a date, how much of you is just, I'm saying yes to her 100%, or how much of you has a genuine posture of, I will say yes to her, but only under these conditions, or the amount of yes I feel is like conditionally 70%, 80, depending on how she respects me and reciprocates. No one wants to talk about that real-time dance that should be going on between you and someone else. But they want to talk about it as like a guarantee. So they want to talk about it like subscribing to a service. If I pay my $10 for this service, it is exactly A, B, C, and D. That's how I want the outcome. Without me looking, I want to it's a basic A to B transaction. But relationships aren't like that. Getting to the point of trusting someone isn't like that. Getting to the point of your life functioning and balancing well takes constant maintenance and healthy habits. Yes, as Donna says, hit the like button and hit like I hit the wall. Here's the woman with a sense of humor. That's why Donna has a wrench. Let's see. So the comment in the topic of the last video was, is she good for me and why? And I really want to ask guys and really pose that question to them, because I find the clarity by which I can feel confident and good around someone. And I notice it more and more as I got older in recently years, that when I can understand why I felt good on the date, I can point to things they said and moments as proof of her virtue. And then later on, she's consistent and acts and says the same thing. I'm getting a more accurate representation of her character. I see how she acts when I'm not looking, how she treats strangers, how she talks about her father. All of those things that we talk about in the manosphere are very useful. But how much do you pay attention, and how much do you use that bucket of information and sift it out on a date? How much do you kind of put those pieces like with the person in front of you? Most guys don't. They go on a date on autopilot like they always have, and then when they get in private, they get out their little bucket of toys and start putting them all together on the table, rather than playing with those toys in front of the person they're with. Me and my analogies, I swear. So the title of the topic of this stream is, should you lower your standards or change them? Because I had a comment. Let me go back to this. I had a comment, and I'll find it now. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Something to the degree of something to the effect of, I am lowering my standards in a healthy way or something. And it made me think, a lot of guys have their standards ridiculously high that it's insane. Just like a lot of women do, who think they're 10s and they're 3s. They've overinflated, they've faked their self-esteem to a point that can get them by, that they can overreach and get more than what they deserve, that they've moved past their station in their head because they want to get more than either what they deserve, who they are, or where they are. And it's the whole fake it until you make it thing. And I think guys are tired of it, but women sort of just keep pushing for the top 5% of men. And Luke says, I'll keep this one brief. Change them only as necessary and only if you feel it's the right thing to do for yourself, not somebody else. That's in response to this question. Should you lower your standards or should you change them? Nia says, if anything, our standards need to get higher. So many men have rock bottom standards. And this is what I mean about self-reflection. Have you always been operating as a 5-year-old, quiet, you're just grateful for a relationship, and you really need to raise your standards to the adult version of you, not to an excessive superhero, but readjust, revisit, and rewrite your standards to what age you're at now and what experience you've had and what you really want, what you're sick of, and what you've got in your own single life. Adjust that 5-year-old standard to sort of something comparable to the single life that you've curated that you really like. Adjust it, update it to what you would like with someone possibly in it too, in a realistic way. Solitaire says, all values need to be standards, but not all standards need to be values. It's hard to word. All I know is that men have been doing it for far too long, changing and lowering. What actually hurts to see is the lowering of the standards to prevent loneliness. But after that, what is the difference between changing and lowering? Well said. As I commented, whether you need to change it drastically, lower it, or both, it depends on where your standards are and what you've written for yourself. What you really believe and what you shout from the rooftops in the comment section in your video game group of guys in chat forums and things like that, do they translate to the real world, or can you only shout that and can you only be that in private like a video game? Can you quite comfortably and proudly, without embarrassment, and people will listen to you and convert, can you actually do that in real life too? And I see a lot of guys, the way they talk online, I can't see how that can translate to real life at all. Let's be honest here. A lot of guys will say, human, you're unrealistic in whatever way they say, right? But can you honestly say the way I speak and how I choose my words, I can't convey what I believe politely, civilly to people in real life, whether or not they like it, whether or not they can understand it. But I can express myself politely and well, whatever my point of view. I'm just saying for you guys to really chew on what you think you know, or what really makes you feel good online, that makes you feel like, yeah, I'm getting back at those girls that never dated me, or getting back at, Chicky Poo who left me and took the kids and stuff like that. And I'm not belittling any of guys who've gone through pain, but are you operating from that point of view, slinging mud, or are you really operating from a more stoic point of view that would be respected by other men, who have brains? Is it all 5-year-old feelings throwing mud, or is it an elder's stoicism, intellectually and verbally, like expressing who you are? Melee says, I will give you a simple statement. Water seeks its own level when it comes to standards. I agree. I put a poll up last night. I said, how can you have better outcomes if you refuse? Let me, you can't actually see the last one. Let me reduce my camera a bit. There we go. It's better. How can you have better outcomes if you refuse to adjust your automatic choices? See how I adjusted my camera? That was a very poor analogy. I'm not surprised that most people pick the last one. I lean towards that one as well. Again, I just want to get people into the habit of not holding on so tightly with what you believe to be, your immovable rock of rules, you know? And if you really believe in this, why get so offended if someone says, "Oh, explain it to me." Is it really true? Oh, like, I disagree because of blah, blah, blah. Why are you getting so wound up and bent out of shape? Whatever I love or whoever I love, no matter if someone politely questions it, like, tell me, human, why do you love the woman you're with? I don't get offended. Like, it's like, oh, great. Let me tell you why. That's a great topic. If I love the person, I want to talk about what I love. If I love the thing, if I love the concept, if I love the idea, let me talk about what I love. But if I'm on shaky ground, if it's just all words, if it's just private video game rhetoric online with guys that's kind of kept a guilty secret, just like looking at dirty pictures online, then really, how openly can you be proud of it? So some of the comments coming from this poll were from Hiko says, every day I'm looking to be better, but it is a long, hard road. I use the help of a hypnotherapist who is also a psychologist and has helped clear the last few blocks. The only drawback is I wish I sought external assistance to level up sooner. While all my efforts and learn, including my while all my efforts and learning, including your channel, have helped sometimes a little. Whatever helps, man. I think the most common thing with guys who transcend where they were is, I wish I did something sooner. Face your fears, especially if they're just irrational fears. If there are 5-year-olds' fears, if they're fears that come from a place of, this is who I am, I know myself, and that's just an excuse for you staying in a comfortable place and you don't want to face change because you're fearful from a 5-year-old point of view, I keep encouraging guys to do it, because for me, the simplest thing is, every time I'm afraid to do something I know I should do, and it's just like an irritating, procrastinating fear based on comfort and my dog brain. It's like, just turn around and do it. You turn around, you face your fears, and it disappears. 99% of the time, everything I was stubbornly afraid to face and I knew I should, just turn around and do it, and it's not there anymore. It's a ghost. It's a chimera. It doesn't exist. The way to overcome your fears is to just turn around and face them, and they're not there. They just aren't, guys. Just turn around and face whatever have always been fearful of facing, that you know you should, and it just goes, and you feel foolish. It's like it wasn't there, or the 5-year-old you was behind you, and you faced it, and you just realized you weren't 5 years old anymore. Crummy VCR, he says, human. This hits home, man. It's really been a total reprogramming of my entire self for the last 4 years. It has not been easy. I'm looking at the bigger picture with my overall aim, while being more present in my actions and choices in the now. It's a better life overall, and a lot more of checks and balances on the hour to hour. I know I could not have done this 10 years ago, but I wish I could have. Got to stay focused these days. If the daydream can be all of a sudden lost in a month, if you daydream, you can all of a sudden lose a month, it seems. Anyways, cheers. That is true. That is very true. Go on autopilot, you daydream, you sleepwalk, in a week or two, you've lost. Look at fitness, your physical fitness, whether it's diet or habits. You start to get a habit in place. Like after weeks, like, great, I feel great, I've locked it in. And then you think that momentum will carry it. It won't. You need to just keep on top of it. You need to keep on top of how you think and speak, because it matters to you. Beautifully put. If you daydream, all of a sudden you lose a month. Yeah, the time just disappears the more you daydream. David P., a longtime member, says, my late mother was a narcissist and enjoyed goading me into arguments, which frustrated me. It was only in the last year of her life I learned that she wouldn't change. So in order to have a better relationship with her, I had to change. Same concept with romantic relationships. I would say closer than you think, David, because I noticed it with myself. because your mother really sort of imprints on you very heavily from childhood, because we largely solidify our character under the age of 7, and your mother is the central female character in your life under the age of 7 in a very big survival sense. So it's no surprise that when we sleepwalk, as was just said, when we sleepwalk through our dating life, we're sleepwalking with the female archetype that's cemented in us, which is our mother. So it's kind of I really like how you've tied those two concepts together, because I'm always thinking about those two. How are we um, reflexively operating in relationships, especially with women and romantic ones, where we don't feel good because we feel like we've been here before because I'm acting the same way. Anyway, David continues, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get the same bad result. Adapt. Yes. As what's his face said, the strongest, it's not the strongest that survive, it's the most adaptable that survive. What was that? The biologist or whatever, the very famous one. My mind's going blank. Rob says, every day is a struggle to become a better version of myself. I won't stop until I'm 6 feet under. It was my complacency that caused my suffering, and the result of that suffering is what lit the fire under my ass to take back what I had lost. Yes, and it's important to know that the why the reason I say, not in a neurotic way where where you're deranged and no one can be around you, where you're so hyper that you take all the oxygen out of the room in a conversation when you're around people, but that you're always presently in real time talking and forming your words because you find it interesting to express what you're thinking about now. You're not remembering and then speaking, you are thinking and speaking. And in your time alone, when you have conversations, you churn and chew on this stuff so that in real time in front of people, you can think about what you're saying. You're not just recalling memes. And that's who you are. Because you could be recalling axiomatic memes and things you think about from, the 20-year-old you, and you're my age now, which is embarrassing. And of course people find you weird, or you're going to sort of really narrow the pool of people you can talk to or date. And the thing is, when you're on, why it's so important, listen to me on this. This is what I've learned about myself. Why it's so important to be in real time and not speaking from memes and continually recalling sentences. You need to be in real time, which is a reason why I trained myself to want to do streams, because I felt better in like, no, I like designing my videos. I like scripting my videos. I want it to be perfect. No, you need to get better at this, human, this. In the same way I needed to get better at just turning up to dates and just being myself and just talking to the other person like they might be a potential friend. You need to get better at talking in real time, because if you're not, you just rely on memes and you're awkward. And if you're better at speaking in real times, you're better at actually hearing real time come back to you, because you know what it sounds like, because it's coming out here, and only real time can feel good in a good feedback loop. Because if they're defensively in their girl power realm and talking from memes and blocked in spirituality and, the garbage self-help of today, it doesn't come back in the same way you are. If you're talking in real time and being who you are, and there's no fear there, and you're relaxed, you will notice that feedback loop, and you will notice the lack of it too. That guy Pete you refused to invite to gatherings, he says, I chose the old dog new tricks option in terms of this poll. Pete picked the fourth one. So he says he chose the you can't teach old dogs new tricks. He continues, we are most malleable as children. That is, the maximum impact of environmental influence on our genetic expression is when we are young. As we get older, we are less prone to change, and what we are, a combination of genetics and environment, crystallizes. I agree. I do agree with you, but I'll give you my nuance on that later. He continues, bearing traumatic experiences perhaps that essentially short circuit us. It is high nigh impossible. I wouldn't say impossible, and likely improbable. I would agree there. To teach an old dog new tricks. A man changes that potential. Uh, if a man changes that potential, was always there and part of what crystallized. Yeah, he never tapped into it until this point, but it ain't. But if it ain't there, it ain't there. I don't disagree with you totally there, Pete. But the fact that we do the right thing when pushed, whether it's by pain, a doctor saying, "Hey, you're going to die in 3 months if you don't change this right now," we do what we have to do. When we're pushed, when we're forced to do the right thing, we do it. Sometimes you're forced to do something completely out of anything in the scope of your reality, how you've crystallized, as you put it. I realize that, as I mentioned, you are crystallized in the way you relate to women. You find an abusive relationship analogous to love because that's how your mother may have loved you abusively, and anything else is boring or neutral or doesn't last, and just doesn't hold any water, and you move on quickly. Same for men and women. Um, but the fact that we do the right thing when we have to, I would say that pushing in the direction of what we know to be right and still being you. I'm not saying change your life and your character and become a completely different fake person. But if you know you can turn your own dials to settings that, and they are your own dials, or they're dormant dials, as you've mentioned too, that were still there but you never touched. That's what I'm trying to push guys to do. Sometimes they were so stubborn. Sometimes people were locked in a room of their parents until much later on, and someone or something liberated them into a different way of seeing the world. Sometimes the group of friends that you associate with online or that you have been the room that you've been locked in, and you haven't been able to. Some people need to travel the world literally to be able to kind of get out of their bubble. So I'm not saying you're 100% wrong and I'm 100% right, Pete. But even within your statement, I do agree with some of those where those nuances do lead. The thing is, if you're 100% happy, especially to the degree that we're, say, nervously neurotic in sort of how we talk about these things and think about them, and if you're constantly frustrated by the lack of friends and the friction and your level of feeling alone and your inability to meet people halfway in the world, like not, I can't expect to have these conversations just with random people I meet in the street. If I do, it's like winning the lottery. But if I want these conversations, where can I go and how can I create environments and platforms like my YouTube channel and set my compass in ways to have these conversations? So similarly, how can I have better relationships both romantically or platonically by gauging myself and my compass better rather than saying there's no compass. I'm just jumping off I'm jumping off a cliff. Put on your seatbelt, Dorothy, and let's just hope for the best. I refuse to have relationships that way. I did it too much before and justified it intellectually. And many of us can do it. And for instance, Pete, you've have a really high strength of intellectual sort of discernment to sort of sift that pan and make sense of things in your way analytically, which I don't. Mine is more philosophical in nature, and some guys will just say more emotional, whatever. I don't care. But mine's more empirical and philosophical. Whatever you do to make sense of things, whether you're more data driven or more empirically, philosophically, mathematically, scientifically, I would say don't just put all your eggs in one basket. Look at the data, look at the science, look at where you're drawn to, where your strengths are. If it's very analytical, great, you've got a strength there, use it to your strength. But don't negate the fact that relationships are very personal, very stochastic, and we're so unpredictable that you can't rely on a ruler to measure gas, or something that's sort of like the ruler really does a poor job at measuring this thing. You can use it to a certain degree to predict the average, but the specific or the person or the part in or the hobby or the way you're engaging in this thing in life, whether it's a person or a thing, that ruler only goes so far. And so many of us take the ruler to measure everything to its totality and say, I'm using this ruler that I love. I love the language of it. I understand it the most. And I can understand the general with this ruler that I use. And I'm going to judge everything with it because I can, but you are not being honest about the limits of the ruler you want to use. It really, and it has to do with the thing you're measuring, and it has to do with are you measuring it as the 40-year-old you, or are you using that ruler as a 5-year-old? There are so many nuances that if we don't at least look at it philosophically like this and discuss it this way, if you are just a calculator spitting out words, if you're a robot trying to act like a human being and wondering why you don't feel anything, that could be the basis of much of our problems. Anyway, any more questions, guys? Super chat me if you are in this conversation live, and I'll see it definitely. Or put 3 yellow emojis in front of your question too. How can I can't change the setting. Top chat. Let's put live chat. Maybe I'll get more. At the top of my live feed, there's live chat or top chat. I had it on top chat. Maybe that's why I didn't see all of your questions. So I apologize. If I've missed any super chats, guys, those who have super chatted me and I haven't seen because maybe that was this setting, put a red exclamation mark icon or a stop sign in front of your comment. Let's see. All right. No guarantees with almost anything. I'm super tired of tribes like men are only rational, women are emotional. Yeah, I got tired of that as well. Let's be honest. I'm not. I don't enjoy my relationship with my woman mathematically. I enjoy the ambience of how it feels to be around her and have her in my life. It is a feeling. There are practical aspects I can point to too, that I can sort of, talk about what virtues, like why I feel the way I do. I can point to those. But the goal of it isn't to have a practical person to help me lift a couch or buy groceries. We have to acknowledge that the vast majority we want personal relationships is the ambience of how it makes us feel. It's not quantified by STEM. Real name's not given. Yes, it was you. He says, I think it was my comment. Lower my standards to something reasonable, and solid. Yes. Yes, it was you. Sorry, I forgot to kind of paste it in the comments here. But it was the basis on the title of this stream, so thank you. So sometimes if we're self-reflective, we will humble ourselves to know that, yes, I need to lower my standards from this lofty place that is ridiculous and clownish, and I look like a 5-year-old, and I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, and no one will be around me because I'm not conducting myself as an adult. In the same way, we look at these fat 3 out of 10 women on Fresh and Fit who say, I'm a 10, and I want, Christian Grey. And it's like, oh, okay, Cinderella, keep living that bubble. Either you'll be alone with cats or you'll be in a psych ward or in front of a therapist for the rest of your life. And she'll be your friend when no one else will. Gary says, I agree. There is so much shallow, short life with the average guy in a relationship with a woman everyone wants. Princess can just change her underwear. Beauty is inside, then out. It's about clarifying what you want, not checking off tick boxes. Yes. I mentioned this. It brings to mind this thing I mentioned before. Before I was like, I think 32, 33, one of my really big check boxes was she cannot smoke. It was on my list of things. And it's great to have a list of things just to clarify, like these things are important to me, damn it. Like I'm no longer just going to see where it goes and see how I feel. Let me just put some solid things on paper that I really find important, that if I had them, they would do a great deal to keep me with this person. These are great qualities that I'd be grateful for that they had. Let me put them on paper. Then also, let me put what I wouldn't like, that I really can't live with. Single mothers or whatever it is for you. And then I remember one when before my early 30s was no smoking. And then I had, before now, the best relationship I'd had, a serious relationship till then, with this girl. And the only downside was that she smoked, but she was respectful. She smoked outside. She chewed gum. She realized how it affected me. She wanted to quit, but couldn't. And she was just a light smoker, but she smoked every now and then. And I was like, well, that's off the checklist. It's a ridiculous one. And sometimes the checklists do well when everything about them just doesn't feel right. So if you're on a date and you really can't tell why, but the first date is just terrible and you're walking on eggshells, you don't get along, and she smokes, that superficial checklist can do well just to get rid of her because you want to trust your judgment. It's like, yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, she's hot. Yeah, walking on eggshells. Oh, she smokes. Yeah, you know what? Too much. No. Next. And so that's what that's good for. But sometimes it shows you that your superficial checklist needs to be adjusted, just as when you get older, you need to adjust a lot of what you think you know. Realistic Delinquent says, too many men in the YouTube comments fail to remember and understand the spirit of the acronym MGTOW. Yes, you can't order a man committed to go his own way to do something for you. That's right. I think a lot of people forget that it's your own way. It's like when I found MGTOW back in the day, and the reason why I wanted to talk to and make videos with those guys shoulder to shoulder is to all of us talk about how we no longer want to be used, what the unfairness is, how we want to, in a self-determined way, in a philosophically, scientifically based, stoic, philosophical, empirical way, go our own way and stand proud as an individual guy. And we can share and come to the campfire and sharpen how we're going to do that individually, all of us. But now it's just like a shaming pool, a group of men. LOL, you've got a girlfriend. LOL, this guy gets married and has kids. LOL, it's like, I know the degree that you can go your own way if you're married with kids and, she's got an awful personality and she's got face tattoos and she was an ex-stripper. Like, it's almost to zero. But rather than shaming a man, all it is now is just a childish PUA / 5-year-old superhero group. Now, I respect the guys who still treat MGTOW like what the acronym suggests and what it was. And I can only tell that by talking to individual guys. But I had to actually get rid of being labeled that because I was associated with 95% of the 5-year-old PUA spurgs that, put the MGTOW sticker on their t-shirt. It just became a religious group, a childish religious group. And if you're part of that, guys, and you're mature, I'm not making fun of you, but I just can't. I just find it's a waste of my time going into those groups and thinking I can just have a live and let live conversation. Like either guys don't want to speak, they try and shame you from having a different life other than their cookie cutter life. But I wish a lot of the more mature philosophical discussion could come back. But I think MGTOW has become something else. I'm not MGTOW anymore because because I'm not objectively. You look at what it is, the middle of the bell curve, what MGTOW is, I don't belong there at all. I'm on the extremes. I'm an outlier. I don't even belong anywhere there, I think, other than I can join in a sensible conversation when they do talk about topics, but then they just start making it personal. The whole manosphere has just become a lot of it's become a personal henhouse of, it resembles, when you saw that interview between Kathy Newman and Jordan Peterson? Like a lot of times I kind of feel like I'm Jordan Peterson, and I'm not saying I'm equivalent to him. I'm just using a very weak analogy. Whenever I talk to a lot of the manosphere, I feel like I'm Jordan Peterson and everyone else is Kathy Newman. So what you're saying is, and they're just trying to personally kind of find cracks, and it's all about the personal justifying your little bubble rather than, I don't care about what your personal is. You can touch on your personal to inform the objective discussion we can have as adult men, allowing each other to come from different places and talk around this campfire, rather than grabbing each other's head and pushing it into the campfire if we don't agree with each other's very narrow point of view. Anyway, William says, Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. I'm assuming that's an author. Just 5 minutes of whatever, but do it every day and your new habits will show up. The brain is plastic, but resists when you push too hard and too fast. Set the agenda and the new rhythm and it will follow. I followed this on from Pete's comment, right? I realize our neuroplasticity hardens the older we get, but and I acknowledge it's harder and harder. And as you say, not nigh impossible, but very, very improbable and harder and very unlikely, especially if you adopt the same rigid mindset. And so I agree, your neuroplasticity is very, very inflexible. You're very hardened. But what's the alternative? Keep frustrated, keep feeling alone, keep having trouble sleeping, keep having the same cookie cutter conversations where you feel like a fraud, keep feeling like you're going to the high school reunion and everyone is saying, oh, remember that time on the playground, human? Oh, remember women? Remember Nancy when you asked her out and she did this? Ha, ha, ha. And it's like, yeah, okay, I can go through the motions of laughing about Nancy and going back to my memory. But like, I want to know what this guy's like now. Like, what are you doing now, Bill, 20 years later? No, we're just talking about high school. And I recognize, guys, I recognize that the neuroplasticity of all of this, it's very hard to be flexible, but the longer we're inflexible, the more it's just going to solidify and you're going to be concrete. I realize that we crystallize, but as much as you can, try and rather than looking at it as crystallization, look at it as flexibility and plasticity. And if you can, intentionally take that flame and soften the plasticity around a certain area so that you can let, a conversation around an assumption that's always a black and white roadblock for you that may be able to be movable or adjusted if you're able to hold on less loosely, that's all I'm saying, Pete. And by no means I'm not attacking you, because I've got a lot of those biases that I have to face, and I have to tell myself, like, no, let's not sort of be religious about what we think we know. Let's revisit it. Let's have an open conversation. Sometimes if you think there's no point talking about it because it is what it is it the way it is regardless of how you would act? Or is there a way that you can still respect yourself and adjust how you approach it and how you speak? Are you talking about it in the same way? Or is there a way without embarrassing yourself and still be able to live with yourself? And it's your choice to walk and talk the way you want to talk and walk. Is there a way to do it where it can be like taking a holiday and coming back and learning something? It's like, you know what, I was a bit rigid. I'm glad I actually gave myself a little leeway to talk about this differently and maybe see where it goes. But again, it's your choice, guys. It's you will naturally crystallize where you won't let more information in. You can't change. Just like your body, it becomes inflexible. But the more you train in the way that, like, for instance, now I'll go back to physical training. I can't train and exercise and play sport in the same way I did when I was 20. If I still want to engage in it, I have to adjust how I train, how I stretch, how I recover, the time periods, the amount of nutrients I need to take as opposed to my 20-year-old self, the amount of sleep I need. There's all these fine-tuned adjustments you have to approach physical health in the same way you need to approach mental health. I think a lot of us are trying to play the same sport in the same way, both physically and nutritionally and mentally in the same way we did when we were 20, and now we're 40 and we only know one way. Unfortunately, you want to play this sport, or if you want to actually even just be part of the conversation in this sport, the healthy and objectively good way to sort of be involved, you need to adjust in a lot of ways. Some ways will be true regardless, but how you approach it and conduct yourself makes a lot of difference from the results you get out of it. If you're doing it the same way, exactly the same way, you will get the same results, which will lead you to all women, all men. There's no point. How long have I been blabbing, huh? An hour and 20 minutes. Holy F. All right, guys, any last comments or super chats? If you're here, post them now. And let's wrap this thing up in the next 2 to 3 minutes because I've been going for a while. A further addition to real names not given's comment. Let's see. He says, part one of my comment, I'm lowering my standards in a sense. She doesn't have to be this or that. Does she arouse me? If she arouses me, she's a net benefit. Do I see this woman as a great mother to my future children? And then part two is she manipulative? What does she want versus what do I want? Will she give me the alone time I need to recharge? Will she be supportive? These are some of the big questions I ask. Yeah. And a lot of them, you can frame that around one big, focusing on one big sort of recognizing one big feeling. Hang on, this feels unfair. I feel odd. Why do I feel odd? Is this fair? Is she being fair? Is she contradicting herself? Does she say one thing? Does she mean another? And the more you can actually, and not just think about this in your head on your own, assess her in real time by talking back to her and getting her to answer you, rather than not saying what you think on a date, trying to store it all, going back and forming a narrative in your head. I encourage more guys to learn how to think in real time and get that feedback loop going so that in real time you assess the person more accurately. Not because a lot of times our memory isn't the best thing we can do. Our memories are not that great. They're fairly poor in terms of accuracy when we recall. But in the moment, you're recalling that moment. It's the best way you can recall what is said, word for word, and how you feel in response to it. Crummy VCR says, I do feel that a lot of people are not listening to you, but they are listening to you to mess up or for cracks in your points. Like, well, yeah, I'm not a pillar of perfection. Shocker. Yeah. I constantly say I am chewing on this stuff in real time. My videos are an open diary of the things I'm trying to keep sharp and revisit and turn over and, keep healthy mentally about and keep these topics fresh and important and in the conversation. They're not a set and forget type of thing because these things are always in real time relating to people. And if you don't know how you're relating to them, they're going to sort of impose themselves on you. All right, guys, any last comments or super chats? And we will call it a day. Did I have any? No, I read that one out. All right. Keep the comments coming. I really enjoyed the comments and getting out and about and filming myself on a walk. That was a lot of fun. And I think it was kind of an interesting change from the headshot of just talking like this all the time. Although when there's a very important topic that there are very clear points where I want to get them across in the way I want to get them across, like the previous video I did to the last, I really need to kind of sit down and be focused. But then when I just want to have a walk and talk, hang out with you guys, I really enjoyed that. So I want to try and do more and more of that. Let me know in the comment section below here or under the last video where I was walking out in public on a hike, talking about if you like her, why do you like her? Let me know below that video if you really liked it. Actually, I'm going to do a poll on it and get you guys to respond whether you like that video. Do you want more of them, or do you like the talking heads ones? Anyway, enjoy your Saturday/Sunday wherever you are around the world. Hello to my fellow Australians, and I'll catch you in the next video. Like, comment, subscribe, jump on my Gilded server, link below this video, I think, but also in my About section on my YouTube channel in the About tab underneath the banner. I'll try and drop in if I can. And yeah, if you've got a microphone, you can chat amongst each other, and I'll try and drop in and chat as well. But other than that, have a good weekend, and I'll see you in the next video. Like, subscribe, join the channel if you feel like it, and thank you to everyone who dropped in. Later. Bye. Okay.